In order to begin building our stringed instrument, one of the first things we're going to need to do is determine the size of our stringed instrument. I'll be making a long-necked banjo. This is an example of a regular banjo. The type I'm going to make has 3 frets beyond this, allowing for lower tones. So, in order to figure out the dimensions of what I'm going to be building, I need to figure out what the scale length that I'm going to be working with is. The scale length is the distance between the bridge and the nut on the instrument. That's going to impact how tight the strings need to be, and it's going to impact what notes the instrument can play. You see, this instrument is made with a certain scale length, and it has a certain tuning that the instrument is played in. This one is open G, so this note is D, followed by G, then B, and another D. The long neck banjo is going to allow me to play an open E tuning, which will be much deeper. So, in order to figure out how big to make this whole thing, I need to figure out what my scale length is going to be. So in order to do that, I want to keep a similar string tension to what I have on this banjo, so that I don't have to deal with any extra string purchasing decisions. I can just use regular banjo strings on the new banjo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the new scale length based on this scale length. So we need to measure what this scale length is. For scale length measurements, it's going to be best to use metric, because that's going to make our calculations line up a lot more easily, because we are going to have to do some math with this, and the decimals will all work themselves out. So this scale length is going to be 66.4 centimeters. So I'm going to write that on my board. Now that I have the scale length, let's apply a little bit of waveforms to this. So when I pluck the string, it's going to make a wave. So when I pluck this, the string vibrates back and forth. I need to know, 1, how long that vibration is, and 2, what frequency it is. So the scale length is going to be the length of that vibration, and then I need to know the frequency. To figure out the frequency, I really have 2 options. One option is I can use an app, just a tuning app, that'll tell me the actual frequency of the note that I'm playing. So the D in it comes out at about 146.8 hertz. The other option is to just look it up in tables online. Since I know that I'm going to have a length of 66.4 centimeters, I can look up online what that frequency should be for that note, and that is 146.5 hertz. Hertz means vibrations per second. So this is moving back and forth 146.5 times each second. Now what I need to know is how quickly that vibration moves through this string. That kind of responsiveness, that velocity of that vibration is really going to be what determines the overall scale length, and it's going to be what determines the position of my frets. Okay? So this does take a little bit of math. So in that same table I can look up online, I can say, well, this is a D note. This is D, the D3, and I need my new length, my new note on this same string needs to be a B2, which has a frequency of 123.5. Okay, so the equation I'm going to use is going to be the length times the frequency is going to be equal to the second length times the second frequency. So these are going to have the same ratio, okay? So my first length is 66.4 centimeters times my first frequency of 146.5 will be equal to 123.5 times the second length. So all I do is I take these two, multiply them together, divide by that one, and that should give me my full scale length for my new instrument. And out of that, I get 78.8 centimeters. So my length from my bridge, from the bridge of my new instrument to the nut of that new instrument, needs to be 78.8 centimeters. So that's going to tell me a very crucial piece of this design. But I'm not quite done. Because notice, the bridge, the neck of the instrument doesn't come all the way up to the bridge. So I need to figure out what length this neck needs to be. In order to do that, I'm going to measure the length of this neck, figure out the difference between this neck and the scale length, apply that same difference to my new scale length. Okay? So let's clean up the whiteboard so that we can keep everything nice and straight. Okay, I'm measuring 48.9. Now I am measuring from the inside of the nut because our pegboard here, that is going to be a different piece of wood that will join at the very edge here. So our neck of our instrument only needs to come up to this section where the strings actually hit. 48.9 centimeters. So then I just need to know this length here, and I'll be able to figure out this length here. Okay? The distance that's actually going to be on the head of the banjo, it'll work the same way with any other instrument, is going to be 17.5 centimeters. So it's going to be the same 17.5 centimeters in both cases, because we're going to be making an identical headstock on our new long neck banjo. So now what I can do is I can take 78.8 minus that 17.5, whatever's left over, is the overall length that I need there. That gives us 61.3. There we go. So now we need to select the type of wood that we're going to be using. I've already decided to use hickory. It's a much heavier wood. I wanted to make it a nice light color with a good amount of weight, and I wanted to see how the density of the hickory would affect the tonal quality of the banjo. So mine is going to be made using extremely similar dimensions to this banjo right here. I'm going to be doing some modifications. Instead of having this this fifth string cut off right here, I'm going to allow it to go all the way to the end. So now that I know the length of my instrument's neck, I can go ahead and cut that length out of the wood that I'm using. I'll be using hickory. I wanted to try how the higher density of the wood affected the tonal quality of the instrument. And I really like the weight of it. I really wanted to feel how that would feel on a longer banjo. The higher density is supposed to make the lower tones resonate a little more, and I'm curious to see how that'll affect it, considering a long neck banjo is made to have better lower tones. So I'm going to be using these dimensions on this banjo in order to help me create the new one. There is a slight taper in the neck here, so I'm going to use those dimensions as well. So just to rough things out right off the bat, I need to take the widest part of the neck, which is 5 centimeters. So I'm going to have this right here is 5 centimeters. And then the thickness is going to be a bit less than an inch, which will work perfectly. This first part of the neck right here, the part where you're actually holding your hand on it, that can be made of one single piece. This part down here where it'll connect, we'll have to add some wood there, but we'll do that later. Our first step is just going to be making the base part of the neck. So, in order to do that, I'm going to rough some wood out, and I'm going to fudge my measurements just a little bit, give me some more working room. So I'm actually going to be cutting 6 centimeters and 63.5 centimeters. That'll give me a little bit of wiggle room for any mistakes that I might make So our next step, take this piece of wood it's already cut to this length, and now I need to cut it lengthwise. Alright, so we're going to cut right along this line. This would be much better to do it on table saw, however, COVID-19, I am stuck at home in my storage room where my bandsaw just happens to sit.